If you were alive in ancient Rome, you would be one of two things: a name or a number. The names belonged to the rich, the powerful, the senators and emperors whose stories fill our history books. But the numbers were everyone else. They were the millions who lived and died in the shadow of the Colosseum, whose lives were far from the marble villas and grand feasts we imagine. This isn't their story. This is what it felt like to be one of them. And it begins with a single, simple truth that defined their entire existence. A truth we will uncover together. Imagine waking up not to the sun, but to the noise of a city that never truly sleeps. You live in an insula, a towering apartment block made of cheap timber and crumbling brick. It's dark, crowded, and smells of smoke, sweat, and cooking fires. Your family shares a single, windowless room. There is no running water, no toilet, just a bucket in the corner. This is home. Every day starts with the fear of two things: fire, which could consume your building in minutes, and collapse, a constant threat in these poorly built structures. Your day begins before dawn. As you step into the street, the city is already a chaotic river of people. Carts rumble over cobblestones, merchants shout their prices, and the air is thick with the dust of a million footsteps. Your first meal isn't a meal at all. It's a piece of coarse bread, maybe dipped in a little wine and water. For most of Rome's poor, this was the standard. A simple, energy-giving start to a long day of labor. But even this wasn't guaranteed. It depended on what you earned yesterday. Work was relentless. You might be a porter, carrying heavy sacks at the docks, or a construction worker on a new temple, hauling stones under the hot sun. Or perhaps you work in a falonica, a laundry, spending your day stomping on clothes in a mixture of water and something much less pleasant: human urine, a key ingredient for cleaning togas. The pay? Just enough to buy food for that day, with almost nothing left over. You worked not to get ahead, but simply to survive until tomorrow. And there was a strange contradiction here. You were building an empire of unimaginable wealth, yet you own nothing. By midday, the city is baking. The rich have retreated to their shaded courtyards, but you are still working. Your lunch is whatever you can afford from a street vendor. A scoop of chickpea stew, a piece of salty fish, or some roasted dormice if it was a good week. These food stalls, or thermopolia, were the heart of the plebeian diet. They were fast, cheap, and everywhere. It was a world away from the lavish banquets of the elite, but it was the fuel that kept the city running. It was the taste of survival. But let's pause for a moment. All this work, this struggle, it wasn't just for yourself. You were likely part of a family. And in ancient Rome, family was everything. Yet for the poor, it was also a source of constant anxiety. A sick child, an injured spouse, these weren't just personal tragedies. They were economic catastrophes. With no social safety net, losing even a single day's wage could mean starvation. This pressure shaped every decision, every interaction. As the afternoon sun begins to fade, your work might be done, but the day isn't over. This is when the city truly comes alive for the common person. The public baths. This wasn't a luxury, it was a necessity. It was your only chance to get clean, but it was so much more than that. Inside these vast, steamy halls, everyone was equal for a moment. You could relax, meet friends, gossip, and escape the grime of your daily life. It was the social hub of the Roman world, a place where for a few coins, you felt human again. Now, let's talk about something the Romans are famous for: entertainment. The phrase bread and circuses is well known. The bread part we understand. It was the grain dole, a government subsidy that kept the masses from rioting. But the circuses, the grand games at the Colosseum or the chariot races at the Circus Maximus, they served a deeper purpose. They weren't just a distraction. They were a powerful tool of social control, a way to make you feel part of something glorious, even as you struggled. To cheer for Rome, for the emperor, was to feel a sense of belonging in a world that otherwise gave you very little. And here's a surprising truth. Despite the harshness of life, the Roman poor were not powerless. They had a collective voice. When the price of grain went up, or a landlord became too greedy, the people would protest. They would riot. They understood that their sheer numbers gave them leverage. The emperors and the Senate were terrified of mob violence. So, while you had no individual power, as part of the crowd, you were a force to be reckoned with. Your anger could change policy. It could make the powerful listen. As night falls, the city transforms. The streets become dangerous. With no public lighting, darkness provided cover for criminals. The wealthy were carried home in litters, protected by armed slaves. You had to make your own way back through the winding, black alleys, hoping to avoid trouble. The fear was real. The city that was a marvel by day became a maze of shadows by night. Reaching your insula, climbing those rickety stairs back to your small room, was a final victory at the end of a long day. But sleep was often interrupted. The noise from the street never fully stopped. And then there was the ever-present threat of disease. In these cramped, unsanitary conditions, sickness spread like wildfire. Life expectancy was brutally short. Many children didn't survive to adulthood. Reaching the age of 40 was a significant achievement. This constant presence of death shaped their view of the world. They lived for the now, because tomorrow was never promised. They found joy in small things: a shared joke, a cup of cheap wine with a friend, the roar of the crowd at the circus. And what about belief? What did you hope for? The official gods of Rome, Jupiter, Mars, Juno, were the gods of the state, of the empire. But on a personal level, you might put your faith in smaller, more intimate deities. Spirits of the crossroads, household gods who protected your family, or mystery cults that promised a better afterlife. These beliefs offered comfort, a sense of control, and a hope that there was something more than the daily grind. It was a spiritual landscape as diverse and crowded as the city itself. So we've seen the struggle, the work, the small joys, and the constant dangers. We've seen a life lived on the very edge. But we haven't yet touched on the one thing that defined it all. The one thing that separated you, the number, from them, the names. It wasn't money. It wasn't property. It was something far more fundamental. Something that, once lost, could never be regained. It was the core of your identity and the key to understanding your place in the Roman world. Remember the truth I mentioned at the very beginning? Here it is. The single most important thing that defined your life was not your wealth, but your status. Were you born free? A libertus, a freed slave, or a slave? This was the true hierarchy of Rome. A poor freeborn citizen, even one living in a slum, had rights. You could vote, in theory. You were protected from crucifixion. A slave had nothing. They were property. And a freed slave lived in a gray area in between, forever marked by their past. This invisible line of status was more real than any wall in Rome. It determined your fate, your future, and your children's future. It was the difference between being a person and being a thing. So when we look back at the grandeur of Rome, the towering monuments and the epic history, it's easy to forget the millions of numbers who built it. Their lives were not tales of glory, but of resilience. They weren't heroes or villains. They were people who navigated a brutal system with grit and ingenuity. They found community in the crowds, relief in the baths, and hope in their private beliefs. They were the foundation upon which the empire stood. Their silent, collective strength is the true, untold story of Rome. Thank you for watching this journey into the past. If this story made you think, please share your thoughts in the comments. And if you'd like to explore more hidden histories with us, consider subscribing to the channel. We have so much more to uncover together.